Welcome to this football strength and conditioning Q&A session. My name's James. I'm a football strength and conditioning coach. I'm based in the UK. I started Matchfit football in 2016, but was studying sports science and football strength and conditioning before that. But that's when I started Matchfit football. Since then, me and my team have coached thousands of players in all different countries to help them become better football athletes. So in this video, I'm going to go through some of those common questions I've received about football strength and conditioning. If you've got any additional questions, add them in the comment section below. Because I'll likely do another video like this if you give it a thumbs up so that you know that you enjoy it. And yeah, I'll do another video and I'll answer those questions in that video. Okay, so the first question I've got noted on my screen here: should footballers lift weights? So my response to this is quite a simple one. Essentially, if a footballer wants to get stronger on the ball, if they want to be faster, more explosive, have better acceleration, better agility, better injury resilience, then yes, they should lift weights. So the weightlifting or the resistance training is just the tool to be able to achieve those things. And a player of any age can get involved in some form of resistance training, all the way down to, say, a 6-year-old. They would obviously start with something which is more fun-based, in person, in a group, focusing on movements such as hopping, crawling, jumping, climbing, things like that. And then you can progress to something a bit more structured. So I like to start working with players around 9 years old because they just have a little bit more maturity then to follow something a little bit more structured. But even then, we'll be starting with mainly bodyweight based exercises, making sure that they can move well, they've got good levels of stability and balance, and then we can focus on continuing to build strength through more complex exercises and add additional load where necessary, only when they're ready for that though. Then I take players all the way from complete beginner up to advanced in terms of the athletic training to become a better football athlete. So yeah, simple response. If a player wants to achieve or have any of those characteristics, be more powerful, stronger, more injury resilient, faster, stronger on the ball, then they should do some form of resistance training. And there is actually something called like a football only player, where a player who only ever plays football, they're going to limit their progress because they're only going to be using certain muscle groups or certain movements. They're not exposing the body to other movements and developing all the muscle groups, which are sometimes being the ones which are being underused. Sorry, it's my speaker just going off there. So by doing resistance training through a strength and conditioning program, which is properly structured, they're going to become a more well-rounded football athlete and a more effective athlete as well. And their ceiling is going to be higher. If they only ever play football, they could still become a good player, but they're not going to go as far in terms of their athleticism, which is going to directly impact their performance in comparison to if they had some sort of strength and conditioning program structure in there that they were following alongside that. It's only going to enhance their game as long as it's properly structured. Okay. The next question I've got is, at what age should footballers start strength training? So I've really already covered that one there. Young boys and girls down to the age of around 6, even in group football sessions, they can do something fun-based, which is still related to strength and conditioning. And like I said, we can make it more structured from there as we go. So that was just a quick response to that one. But we're always with that, we're focusing on movement quality first before we're adding any load, okay? Will lifting weights make footballers slower? So in terms of speed, what underpins speed? Let's think about that. So strength underpins speed because it determines how much force can be produced and expressed, and also how quickly that force can be applied. So when we're sprinting, we're obviously applying force into the ground through our foot. The more force we can produce, the more force we can put into the ground, the faster we can then produce that force as well and apply it. We can then apply that force to the ground quicker, and that's going to help us be more explosive, which is also going to aid our speed. And then we've also got to tie into injury resilience as well. So through all that training, all the speed training, all the strength and conditioning training, which is enhancing speed as well, if we can remain on the pitch for longer, play more minutes, then without having injury setbacks, that's also going to aid us. So indirectly, it's going to improve speed that way. But yeah, so in terms of the actual question, will it make players slower? It would only make a player slower if they excessively focused on hypertrophy training, which would be adding muscle size without also conditioning themselves to be faster and more explosive. So that's one way, but as a footballer, it's quite difficult to do that because There's limited times during the season where you can train in that way, excuse me. But yeah, as long as you're following proper structure, you're focusing on strength at the same time as developing speed and explosiveness, it's not going to make you slower, okay? What are the best exercises, the best strength exercises for footballers? So a general rule for footballers is using compound exercises, which use multiple muscle groups at the same time, because that's how the body works out on the football pitch. There's no muscle being used by itself in unison. Alongside that, I like to use exercises which are unilateral or single leg. So for example, if we did a lunge, that's more unilateral compared to a squat, because we're working one side at a time whilst the other leg is just offering some stabilization. Or if we're truly single leg and literally just working on one leg and the other leg is off the ground, then obviously that's more even truer single leg exercise. But I prefer single leg because if you think about it, when we're moving on the pitch, when we're running, it's a single leg activity. So one leg at a time is making contact with the ground. The only time two would be making contact with the ground is when we're going up for a header, for example, when we're jumping and when we're landing as well. So really, you want a combination of both, bilateral, so where you're using both legs, and also unilateral, where you're just using single leg. With the single leg stuff, that's also going to develop your stability as well. What I would do, if we're using just body weight or lower loads, then I would go unilateral, because then I can also focus on building stability at the same time. If I'm focusing more on just trying to push against the resistance, then I would go bilateral, where I've got better balance and stability isn't going to be the focus of the exercise. Then I would go with that because it's safer. Okay, so those are the two approaches that I would take. I think that answers the question. Yeah, so compound exercises and unilateral where possible. Don't forget your upper body as well. It's not all about lower body, and also your core. So all of your power, every movement is always originates within your core. So you want a nice, powerful, stable, explosive core. And also your upper body is really important as well, because your upper body, your arms are going to help with your your leg speed when you're sprinting, and it's going to help with you how powerful you are when you're changing direction as well. Also holding off people when you're being marked, and also when you're landing, you need upper body strength as well to avoid things like dislocated shoulders, things like that. I remember a player at the Euros, I think he went up for a header and he landed awkwardly, landed on his arm and his shoulder got dislocated, out for the rest of the tournament. So it's really important having that upper body strength as well, especially for goalkeepers, obviously. Okay, moving on to let's just actually touch on the actual movements of the exercises. So try and think about all the different planes of movement and motion that the body can go through. So we've got a hinge where we're hinging forwards at the hips. So we want some sort of hinging movement in there. We want a squatting movement as well. Then we also want a unilateral squatting movement at the same time, like a lunge movement. And think about how all the different ways that the arms can move and the different directions as well. We can also lunge to the side, so sideways. We can twist as well. We want to think about jumping and landing. All these different movements you should take into consideration and try and touch on all of them throughout all of your strength-based training. Okay, I've got extra guidance in this. I've got the link below, but my book, The Football Fitness Bible, okay, everything is laid out in there for you if you want to grab a copy of that. Cool, so moving on to the next question. Should footballers train full body or split routines? So for me, knowing the challenges, I predominantly work with youth footballers. Youth footballers have very busy schedules, playing for multiple teams often, multiple training sessions throughout the week. So what I like to do is I don't really like full body routines, because I like to know exactly what I'm targeting throughout the week and how much recovery that's going to get as well. So let's say, for example, we were just going to do full body exercises. A player's got a match at the weekends, they're training 3 times throughout the week. Maybe they've got a match on the Saturday and the Sunday, and I'm doing full body and I'm trying to fit in 3 sessions per week. And if I'm hitting my lower body every single session and I'm training multiple times and I've got those matches at the weekend, I'm not going to give my body much time to be able to recover. And the recovery time is really important because that's when the adaptation from those sessions occurs. We don't want to get to a point where we're just feeling tired and there's not as much intensity going into the session, which is also going to hinder the adaptation because it's not providing the stimulus strength that we're looking for. So especially during the season, what I like to do is I like to have a lower body focused workout, but my main focus is lower body. And I know exactly the day where I'm having that lower body additional load, and then how many days before and after I've got rest either side. But at the same time, during that session, I will touch on upper body in some way, and also core throughout that session as well. So I've got like the main focus is lower body with a little sprinkling of core and upper body in there as well, just so I'm maintaining those two qualities and I'm not going like a full week without touching on those. What I would do then is that I'd have an upper body focus session with a sprinkling of lower body and a sprinkling of core in there as well, and a little bit of cardio and quick footwork alongside the strength and power work. And then I would have a core-based session. In that core-based session, the core is obviously the focus, but I'd also have in there injury prevention exercises as well. And when we're doing those core exercises, a lot of them are going to be engaged in the upper body and the lower body, but not as an intense way as in the focus sessions. So that's how I'd work it. I wouldn't do full body workouts where I'm doing like squats and then shoulder press and then that's those sorts of supersets every single session. I would try and prioritize either lower body, upper body or core, just because then I know what I'm targeting. I know the adaptation I'm looking for and the stimulus I need to provide, at the same time as knowing how much recovery time I'm allowing for the adaptations to then occur, and making sure there's enough time before any matches, because the ultimate goal is that the player plays better in their matches and in their team training sessions. You don't want them sore, fatigued, tired for those. So that's what it's all about, enhancing performance in matches. Okay, so yeah, that's my answer to would I train full body or split routines. How many times per week should footballers lift weights or do resistance training? So I've really already covered that. I would aim for 3 sessions per week. And that is because there is quite a lot to cover. In terms of being a football athlete, you've got to be really good at loads of different qualities and they all interlink. So my mobility work is going to impact my speed. My strength work is going to impact my speed. My injury prevention work is going to impact my speed as well, because I want to be able to stay on the pitch for longer. Obviously, my power work is going to impact my speed. My upper body work is going to impact my speed. And that's just speed as an example. If I was focusing on endurance or stamina, then equally everything would be intertwined as well. And it's about periodizing what you're doing. So my focus might be speed. At the same time as maintaining other qualities. And then for another training block, my focus might be endurance at the same time as maintaining other qualities. In the off season, my focus might be more hypertrophy, building my maximal strength at the same time as maintaining maybe my speed, because then I want to focus on my stamina more, so I'm fit enough when I come back for the new season. So you've really got to juggle all of these things. So yeah, in terms of how many times I would do sessions, I would do 3 sessions per week. And just because you need to be hitting on things multiple times per week, we need to provide a strong enough stimulus in each session to then allow the time for it to not detrain and then hit it again. And if you do anything under that, I think you're either going to have to try and cram so much into a session that it's not going to have really any focus, or it's going to make you so sore and fatigued it's going to impact you in your training sessions and matches. So you've got to try and spread the load over the sessions, but also cover the content that we need to cover as well. So I think 3 in season is a good number. In the off season, if a player hasn't got to juggle team training and matches, then we can increase that. We could go to 4 sessions and some pitch sessions in there as well. Okay, so that would be how I answer that one. Next question, is bodyweight training enough for football? So bodyweight training is a great start in terms of strength training for football. You're going to get to a point where there's something called the force velocity curve. If you've got my book or you've seen my previous videos, you might have seen me cover this before. So we've got our maximal strength at the top, which is where the speed of the movement is slower, but we're having to produce greater force because we're using or pushing against a high resistance. And then at the bottom of the curve, we've got our speed velocity based work, where the movement is quicker, it's sharper, but the loads we're working against are minimal. Might just be body weight, or it might even be assisted. So for example, if I was jumping with the assistance of a band, that would be less than my body weight. So we've got to think about that full spectrum. And if I'm only using bodyweight exercises, I won't be able to train that full spectrum. And it's important that we do, because training our maximal strength is as equally as important as training the plyometric and explosive exercises down the other end. If we want to develop over time, if I only ever work on body weight with plyometric, I'm going to get to a point where I plateau, and to break through that, I'm going to have to continue training the rest of the curve, so I can keep going up and down the curve throughout a season and continue to develop and pick up where I left off each time and keep pushing my athleticism to a higher level. So yeah, body weight will get you so far. It's great if you haven't got any equipment. It's better definitely than nothing. There's so many different variations that you can use. It's great for stability at the same time as building strength. But if you want to take things to the next level, eventually you're going to need a little bit of additional load. There's also some movements which are difficult to train with only body weight, and actually that are harder than if you were using if you were using equipment. So for example, if I tried to do like a shoulder press where I'm in like a downward dog position and pressing myself down to try and work my shoulders, so I've got my butt in the air in a press up position with my butt in the air, so that I'm pushing upwards and downwards like that to try and work my shoulders. A player is going to find that harder, or a beginner would find that harder than if they had a dumbbell in each hand and they were just doing a shoulder press. So again, a mixture of both is the best approach. Okay, next question. Are lunges better than squats for football? So I've already covered this, I think, in my first answer to the first question. So lunges are more unilateral and squats are bilateral. So there isn't one which is better than the other. Lunges and single leg exercises probably have a better transfer to football performance, because like I said, when we're sprinting and running, it's one leg on the floor at a time. So if we've got more strength or power in my left leg compared to my right leg, then when I push off my left side, I'm going to perform better compared to if I push off my right side. Or every time when I'm sprinting, when I take a step with my left, I might be able to put more power into the ground compared to my right. So if I can even that up, I'm just going to be more well-rounded, and it's also going to aid my injury resilience at the same time. So yeah, in terms of what I like things like lunges, unilateral exercises, because if I can get a stretch into the movement as well at the same time as building stability and strength, then that's a great bonus. And I would normally do that if I'm using body weight or lower loads. If I'm using a higher load, I would almost always go bilateral, because it's just more stable and it's safer for the player. And if the focus is purely on strength and we're already doing lots of stability and balance work around that, then I would go bilateral. Of course, there's some exercises where you can't do a single leg variation, so bilateral is the only option. So yeah, combination of both is my answer to that. Okay, next question. Should footballers train to failure? This is a great question. It depends on the time of season and the stage where they're at in terms of their experience in the gym or with their strength training. So throughout the season, I never have players training to failure with a strength-based exercise. I go to an 8 out of 10 RPE, so that's rate of perceived exertion, or 2 or 3 reps in reserve. So that would be how many reps you've got left until you feel that you can't do any more, so you've hit failure. The reason why we don't want to hit failure is there's a couple of reasons. One is if we go to about an 8 out of 10 with our strength-based exercises, that's still enough to be able to build our strength over time. It also means that if I train to failure, there's a risk that I'm going to be quite sore and get DOMs, which might hinder me in my training sessions and matches which follow. So that's another reason. We want to try and get to a point where we're triggering the adaptation, but I'm fresh enough to come back and train again, whether it's team training or another gym session, 1 or 2 days later. So I'm not smashing the body and then I can't move for the rest of the week. Just go a little bit less. You're still providing the stimulus for improving your strength, but then you can still manage that, and that consistency is the key. There's no point doing 2 weeks of training, not then having a week off or 2 weeks off and then trying to jump back in again. Consistency over time with deload weeks built in there, so your training load and your fitness is progressing, and the load comes down, you have a little bit of a rest, but it doesn't stop completely, and then you rise back up again, and that's how you keep progressing. The off season is when you could train to fade it a little bit more, because you haven't got to, it doesn't matter if you've got a little bit of muscle soreness. We're looking for that when we're looking to trigger hypertrophy, so increase muscle size. A good time to do that, or one of the only times, is in the off season. The reason you would want to do that is because a bigger muscle can then be conditioned to be a stronger muscle, and then that could be conditioned to be a more powerful muscle. So that's when we want to do that. If we haven't got to worry about matches, then we could focus on some more hypertrophy based training alongside our speed and power work as well. And then we could work to failure in that scenario. Okay, next question. How strong should a footballer be? This is a great question. So for me, or for anyone really, the most important thing when it comes to strength is relative strength. Okay, so how strong the player is in relation to their body weight. So we could have two players in the gym. Let's use a really simple example, doing say a leg press or a barbell back squat. Let's use a barbell back squat, okay? Just probably an example everyone understands. So if we have two players, and just to make it really easy, they can both do 100 kilograms of a barbell back squat for 1 rep, let's say, or 3 reps. If we have two players who can do that, they can both lift that weight, but one player weighs 70 kilograms and the other player weighs 80 kilograms, then the player who has the lower body weight but the same level of strength has the better relative level of relative strength, and that's going to be better for football performance, because if they're stronger but at the same time they're not weighing anymore, then that's going to help them be more explosive. So if you're heavy at the same time as being strong, that's going to limit how explosive you are on the pitch. But if you're strong and also fairly lean and light as well, then you can just be more athletic and explosive on the pitch. But also, obviously, it depends on your position and the qualities of your play as well. Because if you're someone who does need to be big and strong, you don't rely so much on speed, but more on strength from the ball, then you might not need to worry so much about that. But yeah, so in terms of how strong a footballer should be, really focusing on relative strength, and also thinking about the body having its ability to be able to absorb force. So when you're landing from a jump, let's say you go up for a header and you're landing from a decent height, let's say you're landing from, just as an easy example, landing from 1 meter. When you land, you've got to be able to absorb that force. Multiple times your body weight will be going through your joints that you've got to absorb, okay, and then quickly then push off again after that movement. So it's also your ability to not only express and produce force, but also absorb force as well. And then that's your eccentric strength, which helps you do that. So it's really important that we build concentric strength, isometric strength as well, which is where we're holding a position, and also strength when our muscles are lengthening. So when we're absorbing force, that's really important at the same time. In terms of just a marker, let's say with a barbell back squat again, if you manage to do, say, 1.5 times your body weight, 2 times your body weight, really the focus should be finding out where you are now, and then just trying to continue to progress that month on month, so that you are improving. Let's say you got to 1.5 times your body weight, that's a decent amount, and that level of strength is a good indication of your strength throughout your lower body and throughout all your muscle groups. That that having enhanced your strength to that level is going to have a big impact on your level of speed, your strength on the ball, your explosiveness, your injury resilience as well, as long as you condition it alongside other exercises, which are going to help with the stability and all the different qualities that you need, your stamina at the same time. So if you try to then continue training, okay, I'm going to go 2.5, 3, 4 times my body weight, just keep pushing up the weight year on year, you're probably better off just getting to a point where you're 1.5 to 2 times your body weight, and then focusing on the plyometric side, because you've got that good level of strength. Now let's try and apply that strength as quickly as we possibly can and become more efficient at that. So yeah, that's how I'd answer in terms of how strong a footballer should be. Again, it's down to each player and the qualities they want to build. But in general, that's what I would say. Okay, next question. Should youth footballers lift heavy weights? I think I've really already covered that one in previous questions. So we'd be starting mainly body weight, building stability and strength, making sure a player moves well, and then progressing the exercise complexity from there. And then also adding load, and then gradually taking them up that force velocity curve towards the max strength based training. Okay, and that's the final question. Okay, so I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover there in terms of those questions. I wanted to keep it fairly short so it doesn't go on for too long. Apologies if I was mucking up my words a little bit there. But yeah, just one of those days of jumbling my words a little bit, but hopefully everything I said was clear. If you want anything clarified, then feel free to comment below the video. If you've got any additional questions, comment below the video as well. Very happy to answer them in another video. Give it a thumbs up if you found this useful and you got some interesting insights from this. Like I said, I've also added a link below this video to my books and my training programs. If you want any extra guidance of this, me and my team, we work with fully online. So it's an online program that players can follow from home with minimal equipment. We'll take a player all the way from complete beginner in terms of the strength and conditioning side for football, all the way up to advanced. So we work with players who are beginners from age 9, all the way up to players who are adults, but mainly between the ages of 9 and 21, even players who are playing internationally for their age group. We also have a player who, for his country, is going to the World Cup, an adult player. He still trains with us as well. But the focus, my main focus is on youth footballers, because I think there's quite a lot of confusion around this topic amongst parents and youth footballers. Should they be doing it at all? Is it safe? What can they do? My goal is to really remove all of the stress and guesswork from that and provide all the training and structure that youth players can follow to take them from complete beginner and gradually advance them all the way to becoming an elite football athlete. So yeah, like I said, the details of the book and the program are linked below this video. And if you've got any extra comments, then post them below as well. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you in the next one.